if you're in apartments, your challenge is getting tenants. If you're in assisted living, your challenge is getting quality staff.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, excited to have Justin Burke. Justin, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, man. Well, I'm excited to have you, and probably should have had you a long time ago because we've been doing some business with each other. And so wanted to bring you on, though, and talk to you about kind of what we've been doing in business. So why don't you just give our listeners a bit about your background, and then we can just dive in.
Sure. Yeah, I have a background in 1 to 4 unit residential real estate mostly. So, some residential house flips here and there, and 1 to 4 unit income producing property, and ventured into private wealth management. And so got to get a Series 3 license and learn about things like managed futures and corporate bonds, but also real estate syndication. And so from there, I ran into assisted living that way, and it kind of turned out that I kept venturing down that path.
What attracted you to assisted living? You're doing this wealth management, and what actually attracted you to doing that?
Well, the first assisted living deal that I ran into, we were raising capital for it. It was a larger ground up. I think it was 92 beds. And so, we had to study the projects we're doing and kind of understand, we had to be able to pitch it to investors about why this makes sense and why it's suitable for them. And in that process of learning, about that project, I had to learn about assisted living as a whole. And I started discovering there's some opportunity here. And at that time, it was probably 2014, maybe. So it was, as far as a lot of people who've gotten into the industry lately, it'd be considered kind of early in the game. And things were really taking off at that time. And so I became pretty intrigued at that time.
Was there certain, like, what made you intrigued? Obviously it wasn't, there's all kinds of aspects of real estate, right? So what made you actually intrigued with senior housing versus multifamily versus, industrial, anything else?
Yeah. Well, it's probably not unique to me. It's probably, the whole silver tsunami idea I was introduced to at that time. Like, yeah, the economics, you can kind of follow the baby boomers through their path, and they have big effects on the economy where, at whatever stage of life that they're in. And this is their next stage coming up. And so that was, initially that just made a lot of sense. And then when you look at, the types of revenue that assisted living facilities bring in, that's another thing that really attracts the eye at first. And so that'll make you want to dig further. So those are the two big things that made me want to start digging into it.
Sure. And so that was that already built, or was it being developed? I can't remember. I remember you sending me some information, but I don't remember much.
So that one, that was, I think, before.
Oh, even before that.
I was sent, that wasn't a deal I sent you, but that led to another deal that I, ran into a year or two later. Okay. And that one you're talking about was existing. And that's where I really got a deep dive into the financials of an operating assisted living business, and got to evaluate it alongside a very experienced property manager, and I'm dealing with a seller and prospective buyers. And I could not, what I wanted to do was find out how is this, what's wrong with this? It seems like it's a little too good to be true, right? And coming from residential, and Todd, you know, the numbers as they compare between assisted living and say apartment buildings, things like that. You think there's something wrong with this. And so I'm trying to poke holes in it. And I spent probably a year and a half trying to poke some holes in it. There's just none that I could see.
Sure. So then fast forward, like you didn't buy your first building immediately. You didn't buy that building. You didn't buy one immediately. But the first one that you bought was right during COVID, during a pandemic. What the heck were you thinking? And why did you convince me?
Right. Isn't that the first thing that you said to me when I called you is what the heck are you thinking?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, everything that I had looked at and was more comfortable with was in larger metropolitan areas, right? So, you know, and being in the Twin Cities, that just makes you feel better. There's a lot more people around. It's a lot bigger pool of potential clients or residents. But I ran into an investor in the process of evaluating properties and looking at a few other deals. I ran into an investor who was doing only deals outside of the metro. So we had coffee and we talked about why is that? Why would you do that? And he wouldn't look at the deal that I thought was nearly too good to be true inside the metro. He said, that's way too tight for me. He's like, the numbers on the deals that we're doing outside the metro blow this thing out of the water. So I was intrigued by that.
Hey, real quick, I want to talk to you about the North Star Real Estate Conference. We've got the North Star Real Estate Conference. It's a third annual. Of course, we're back live this year after taking a 1-year hiatus and being virtual. We're live. We've got live and virtual options for you. So I'd love to see you there. North Star Real Estate Conference. It's all about cash flowing real estate. So we're going to be hitting on multifamily. We're going to be hitting on all things commercial. We'll be talking about syndications, asset management, all of that stuff that you're going to need to know, and the mindset behind it. I've got a great lineup of speakers. So go on to northstarunlimited.live, buy your tickets now. Want to see you there. I want to network with you. I want to shake your hand. I want to get to know you. And we've got a ton of people that are going to be there wanting to do the same thing. So join us, North Star Real Estate Conference, October 7th and 8th. And it is in the Twin Cities at Mystic Lake Casino. So I hope to see you there.
I ended up coming across a few other, through some brokerage relationships and things like that. I came across these deals that we started with, and it was, just as he had said, outside the metro, there's, lower payroll costs, and you have the same, right? Because a good portion of your residents are on publicly funded programs, and the pay rates don't differ that much outside of the metro as far as inside of the metro, but your expenses are a lot lower. Right. And so I thought, well, that makes a ton of sense as well. And so I'm looking at this, and I think, the pandemic creates some opportunity, and I feel good about those shakeup kind of situations, about taking action in those, economic environments changing and people are scared and things like that. It always creates opportunity, and I want to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the last time I was able to take advantage of an opportunity, and that was during the Great Recession when real estate crashed, when real estate had a big problem and everybody was running the other way. And instead I was able to run into the fire. And a lot of it was just because I was naive. I didn't know any better. But now I look at the same thing, and very similar things happen. We're not seeing a crash, right? We're not being able to buy.
It's not to the level of 2000.
It's not nearly, we're not able to buy these properties for, 10 cents on the dollar, but we are seeing discounts. We are seeing pretty substantial discounts, which is definitely beneficial. but there are some risks involved as well. And so I
Mhm.
think that's important for people to understand that it's not just, when you look at the numbers, you go, wow, these are really good. But what we're finding out is that it's not simple, right?
Right.
It's definitely a more involved business, and there's some things to really be looking out for. Let's talk about some things to really kind of be looking out for, or things that can really hurt your overall bottom line on the properties.
Yeah. I think the very first thing, being a real estate guy that's moving into assisted living, um, and this is pretty common now, because a lot of people in the last 5 years started to see what I saw. And there's a lot of real estate people, searching, a lot of real estate money that's searching for yield, that's found this space.
Yep.
But what the ones who fail seem to not understand is that this is not residential real estate. You can't treat assisted living like apartments. You're not just renting rooms. What you are is you're taking care of people who need, this is a healthcare business, is what it is. So yeah, the number of rooms in your building, determines revenues and things like that. But overall, what you're doing is you're a healthcare provider. And if you don't understand that, and if you don't understand, so then, these are a couple of things that I learned, right? Taking time to evaluate deals first before doing a deal. And I'm glad I learned it before we got in. But the biggest, with the COVID situation, it's a little harder to get residents right now. If you're smaller and if you're quality and have a good reputation, it's not as hard to get residents. But the bigger challenge, I guess, right? If you're in apartments, your challenge is getting tenants. If you're in assisted living, your challenge is getting quality staff. That's your number one deal. And that's, you've got to make that mindset switch, and you've got to be able to manage and lead a staff, because you can take a quality staff with poor leadership and now they're bad staff.
Yeah. And that's definitely something we've been finding out, right? It is, and you got a lot of staff who are a team who becomes I don't know how to state it. Kind of they become lazy. They could become so focused on these one little areas that they don't want to do anything else. They're not necessarily there for the reason they maybe should be there, right? I mean, one of the cool things about the younger generation is they typically care about how the impact they're making.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but if you have a bad team altogether, nobody cares about the impact you're making. And I think that's something we've found as we've taken over some properties, is some of that atmosphere is not there. But that's I didn't realize when we first started in this business how important the team was that's on site, especially, and how important the leadership is. I mean, I knew it was important, but just really diving in and like getting into these properties, like, holy cow, like that's what's going to make or break your buildings. Your residents will come if you've got good staff. But if you've got a poor team and poor staff and a poor reputation, your residents aren't showing up. And so
Exactly.
going to sink quickly.
And it's probably twice the effect if you're in, when you're in these small communities, your reputation sticks for longer and it gets out faster.
Yeah.
And if you're given a poor level of care because you have staff who don't care because they're poorly led, right? It always rolls back up to the top. And if they're poorly led, they give a poor level of care. If residents are getting a poor level of care, eventually the families find out about that too. And I mean, it gets out. And
Yeah.
even more importantly, right, we saw it gets on Google.
Yeah.
And then it sticks.
One of the reviews on a property we had purchased it said something about if you're looking for a great place to send your loved ones to die,
Mm,
this is it. Do you remember that? I think it
I
was
do.
a Google review.
We
And
just got rid of that. We got the last owner to shut down the Google page, so it's not there anymore.
that's good, because that's a terrible review. I mean, talk about
Yeah.
the worst review you could possibly have. This is the place you go send your loved ones to die.
And it's not like there was like 50 good reviews accompanying that.
Right.
There was no good reviews. There
There's
was
no
only
good
that one.
reviews.
Yeah.
Talk about that, and what, like, let's just talk about what were the problems with that building. And there was a lot, but let's just talk about what were the
Yeah.
problems with that building. We were able to get it for a great price, but the great price came with some issues, a lot of issues, quite frankly. And
Yeah.
that's why the price was what the price was. So let's talk about some of those things, that were going on.
Yeah. It seemed to be not that uncommon of a problem, especially, it was run by a larger company, and it was very just top heavy, right? Would be, if you're to say, describe it as quickly as possible, they're very top heavy.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and the other thing too, the large company that was running it, it did not fit their focus, right? It just,
mhm.
this was a kind of an anomaly. This was all on its own. It wasn't really where they focus. So that, you got to preface it with that too. I mean,
Yeah, and
it
in
was
fact,
not their focus.
right, and they had acquired a smaller company who that property was even an anomaly for them.
Yeah.
But that it's just kind of the redheaded stepchild that came with acquiring that smaller company. So they're
Yeah.
stuck with this little thing up there, and they're operating it under the same processes that they're using for 100, 200 bed facilities, and this is 30. And so they just a very corporate environment, but just and it had some dysfunction, lack of accountability, right, because of the geographic separation. And attitude wise, I think his attitude's top to bottom of, well, I'm in the office, and I have a big title, I have an executive title, and I'm not going to be bothered with this. It's kind of, I need to feel important about myself. And then, on down the chain, but half the people at the building are administrative, and they're not doing the actual work of caring for residents, and there's just not the administrative work for that many people to do, but they're collecting a paycheck. So whereas, and so we're converting it to our model, which is a lot more efficient, a lot thinner, where if you're on the clock and it needs to be done, it's your job.
Yeah.
So it's really that simple. So we're moving away from, they had dedicated kitchen staff, and they had multiple, they had 3 full-time nurses on staff, and that were there every day, full time. And you just, along with, multiple, I think they had 2 full-time administrative staff that were there in addition to that. And it was just a mess. And then you had employees, floor workers, refusing to take care of certain residents. So it's a culture they had created there. And a culture of finger pointing, and lack of personal responsibility, and lack of ownership of the mission, right? So that's what we're pushing, is our mission is to add life to the years of our residents, and everybody on our staff owns that mission. They own it. So if it needs to be done, if we have everybody own what needs to be done, everyone just jumps in and does it. But it's that ownership of the mission that doesn't matter what business you're in or what team you're on. So that's number one. What's the mission? And everybody owns it.
Justin, it's funny when you said the mission statement. I was just thinking of the property we were at the other day. When we look on the wall, and the mission statement was like 3 paragraphs long. But state the mission statement again.
Our mission is to add years. Well, it's
Yeah.
easy to say it wrong too.
Yeah.
Our mission is to add life to the years of our residents.
Yeah. And it's easy for everybody to remember that. And so as we press upon the staff to make sure they're following through with that mission, it's not that they have to recite a 3-page document, right? All they need to do is remember just a short sentence. I think that's super important when we're talking about mission statements. And I think when you have staff, you need to have a strong mission statement that's simple, it's concise, and it's very easy for us to understand exactly what we're trying to do. And that mission statement is all about the residents. It doesn't say anything about anybody else. It talks about what we're trying to do with the residents. And that's what they're there to do, is to serve those residents. And so what can you do to serve the residents? That means you need to step up, right? That means you need to step up when a resident needs help. Whether they're your favorite resident or their least favorite resident, you need to step up to help them. If we need help in the kitchen, well, these residents need to eat, right? They need good food. So go to the kitchen, help out in the kitchen. And I feel like, obviously things are still progressing, but it seems like people are taking ownership, that people are, starting to make those changes, and the right people are the ones that stick around. And you and I have that same philosophy of that. Is it's not like we're going through there and just bull in a china shop, just mixing everything up and firing everybody involved, but we are trying to naturally kind of weed out the people that shouldn't exist in that environment and continue to keep those who do want that type of environment, who do believe in the mission statement and are truly there to serve the residents. And the people that aren't there to serve the residents are going to naturally just kind of leave.
Yeah. And that's what we want. And anytime you're going to change a culture, that's what's going to happen, right? Is the people who aren't going to fit, and people, there might be people who don't fit now who have the capacity to make the adjustments to fit into a culture. But the people who just aren't going to fit, they're generally going to leave on their own. You usually don't have to tell them to leave. They grow very unhappy. But it's not easy because, and especially I was thinking maybe we should back up a half step to say that if that was our first acquisition, I think we would have not done any more, and that one would have failed. I don't think we would have we wouldn't be able to make it work if that was our very first property.
Yeah, would have been a lot different, right?
Yeah.
We have some amazing support staff right now that are coming from outside of this building and coming in and doing a lot of amazing work within. So yeah, 100%. We bought 2 buildings that, again, even those, though, when you look at that, there was some of that. It's funny, the staff, we do these interviews, right, with these staff before we purchase the buildings. And I would say the vast majority of them want the same thing. The vast majority of them really truly do. They want to take care of the residents. And they want accountability. Like, they all want the same thing, and they're all like say the same thing. You just the few that don't say the same thing, okay, they're maybe that's maybe the one.
Well, nobody takes a job at one of these places just for the paycheck.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You're gonna have to do some stuff that most people aren't willing to do.
Yeah, you can get a paycheck at easier jobs than this. So you have to care about the people. You have to feel like, hey, I'm doing something important, and you are, right? But yeah, it's just funny, the environment, but the majority of the people that are there truly care. Like, I feel like that is the truth. Even when you have a bad environment, now it's just, okay, how do we make everybody accountable? I think that's a big thing, right? Making everybody accountable. How do we make everybody accountable? How do we make everybody follow and believe in the mission? And how do we be good leaders to these people so they know their expectations, they feel accomplished at the end of the day? That's been so valuable. Yeah, I agree, though. If we would have bought this as our first one, and we wouldn't have had the right, because there's some great people in place, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But some of the leadership that was where it was probably lacking the most. There's maybe
Yeah.
some leaders, but there's there was some definite need there.
Yeah. And I mean, you could just see it in their numbers. I mean, it was just a nosedive. And so, this is not an uptrending, income income base. And so, yeah, we definitely, I think we have a good enough broker where he would not have let us do this as our first deal. But I think that was there's so many blessings in the first deal that we did do in the staff that we got. Well, mainly in the staff that we got, incredible staff. And not that they don't have any problems, but we were really, we knew we were looking for this is something that's turnkey, right? And we emphasize that in the process of negotiating. This is our first deal. It has to be turnkey. If this is going to require us to step in, especially in the day-to-day, we don't want it. And so it did. I mean, we got a few real rock stars as far as staffing goes. And who is now we have our now regional director, along with a couple other people, and we had a nurse in this group that was just sitting on the sidelines not being used. So now when we have this new property that's about an hour away, she's ready to go, ready to jump in the game, which is amazing. I mean, that's like a bonus we didn't know we had. And so we're able to staff it with a nurse that's from our culture and buys in, and we have a regional director that's on site regularly helping with the transition. We got rid of most of the cancerous staff before we even closed. And later on we found out just a couple more weeded themselves out, and we feel like now I think we have our people. Now I think we have all the right people. Probably need a few more.
Yeah, we might need a few more, but this again, it's the environment, the accountability is a lot of that's changed now, and I just think it was really interesting because you could tell it was more the institutional feel. Like we said earlier, it's like if you were a floor worker, you did just specific things, and you wouldn't think about doing a load of laundry. You wouldn't think about cooking even stepping into the kitchen,
making breakfast for someone. Yeah.
You wouldn't think about doing something like that. And so it's just a changing of that environment. Let's talk about how you have specifically done things, because I think that's really valuable. You hold weekly meetings, actually 2 now.
Bi-weekly now, yeah.
Yep. So let's talk about those. Just kind of briefly describe how you lead those meetings and what you're bringing to them that you feel has been working.
Mm-hmm. As far as leadership structure, my main communication is with our regional director, who I try to drive a culture through her. And she's 100% in, both feet, and she gets it. And so she already has the respect of, I don't know anybody who works for us who doesn't absolutely love her. And she's just naturally gifted as a leader. So we're incredibly blessed to get her. So I try to drive the culture through her. She's on board. She has much more consistent communication with our staff than I do. But between me and the leadership staff, so we have a regional director, and then we have each house has a coordinator, right? So that's otherwise it's pretty flat. It's pretty flat other than our nurses. So we have our house coordinators and our nurses. We try to keep it decently flat, right? Because the more hierarchy we have, the more we're going to get overextended. But there has to be some kind of structure. So we hold a bi-weekly meeting, Monday and Thursday with that leadership staff. And what we want is to, we want to find out, keep tabs on what's going on, what are the problems we're dealing with, what are the successes we're having, but also be able to cover, we have 7 attributes that are essential to anyone who's on a part of our team. And so we go through, there are things like that: extreme ownership and resourcefulness. And, we go through the whole list of them. We usually go through one. For a while, we went through one at every meeting, and we kind of reinforce it with a video. And then they hold daily short little 15 minutes at shift change. So we have the most possible people there. So they hold stand-up meetings with all the staff that's there at the moment. And then they reinforce those attributes with that staff. So but the regular community, right? We found out like that's not always the communication between leadership and the boots on the ground. A lot of times that's not there at all, or it's just very lacking. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the 7 attributes?
Our 7 attributes are: number 1 is extreme ownership. We own it, right? We own everyone owns a mission. Number 2 is resourcefulness. Number 3 is you got to have a big why. You have to have a deep love for why we do what we do. 4 is growth. 5 is an obsessive commitment to excellence. Number 6 is reliability. We made sure and put that one in there, right? I think the first time we interviewed staff, that was the biggest problem that they had, was people not showing up for shifts. And number 7 was gratitude, recognizing the gifts you've been given.
That's awesome. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, I'm sure we could cover a lot more. We're probably going to have to do another podcast episode, but just for time, I want to make sure we're wrapping up. So, because I think a large portion of my audience listens to this like on a drive. So, we can't go too long. Although sometimes I feel like we should just keep on talking. I get some guests where I'm like, I got to keep going for a long time.
Right.
I want to ask you a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
First off, what's a book, a favorite book, business, real estate, whatever, that you can give to our listeners?
Man, now I have a list and I have to pick out of a list.
Just one, maybe 2.
I would say, across a number of areas, I would say Never Split the Difference.
Oh, I like that one. Yep.
Yeah. And that's, we're kind of using that stuff right now with our staff, empathy training. So it actually empathy skills, not just like being empathetic and understanding what empathy is, but having skills that you can use that demonstrate empathy and build trust with people is applicable across the spectrum of all the things that you do in life.
Yeah. Very, very true. Okay. So what are your 3 pillars of wealth creation then?
3 pillars of wealth creation. I mean, sort of passive income, reliable, maybe reliable reoccurring income. I'll say passive income is, I guess, somewhat of a myth. Any income, if you leave it and forget about it, it's going to go away. But so reliable recurring income, and being a lifelong learner, and having a purpose or clarity on your goals.
I like that first one that you said, that passive income is just, that's not true. Like, you can't have passive income. You have to do something. Like you're going to, even the people that passively invest in our syndications, they aren't 100% passive. They're pretty close, right?
Yeah.
But they are vetting my deals. They're vetting myself. They're making sure that they actually want to invest. They hopefully, and it depends on the person, right? Everybody's, but they're typically reviewing some statements here and there. They're doing more than just nothing,
right,
for getting the deals. Now they're pretty passive, but
it can be misleading. Some people can think like, oh, good, I can lay on a beach and forget about it and just collect checks. Like, that doesn't exist. Yeah. So I thought it did for a while, but it doesn't exist.
Not if you want to be successful, at least.
No.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Justin, and you're going to be at the North Star Real Estate Conference too,
Mhm.
along with Mark, who's a property manager in the assisted living. So we're going to do like a fireside chat, just talk, just ask questions. The guests, all the people in the audience are going to be able to ask questions. I'm just going to probably lead it. We're just going to sit down. We're just going to talk and be honest and open about what senior housing is all about, what the need is. There's a big need. As you already mentioned, the baby boomer generation is just coming, right? And they're not really even in it much yet,
Mhm.
right?
We're taking care of the silent generation right
Right.
now.
Yeah, exactly. The average age of our residents, what, like 80 in their 80s, right?
83 is generally, yeah. Mhm.
So the baby boomers are the oldest baby boomers are like 74 years old, 75.
Mhm.
They're not even, a couple of them are there, but mostly no.
Right.
And so, yeah, like you said, we're taking care of the silent generation right now. That
Mhm.
baby boomer, that wave is coming. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot there. And when you talk about rural communities, I actually have the statistic that over 50% of the baby boomers live in rural areas. And
Mhm.
so that's a big population.
Right.
Boomer generation is a really big generation. Half of them are living in the rural communities. And so rural areas aren't necessarily a bad thing as well. There's a lot of opportunity there. So anybody who wants to get involved in assisted living, I'd come to the conference, meet Justin, meet Mark. You could, there's a lot of questions to ask, and you got to make sure it's the right industry for you. But there's definitely opportunity there. And there's a lot to learn. So I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
you got a promo code. It's Burke, Burke. So people can type that in, they can get a discount. Man, I
Perfect.
really appreciate you joining us. How can our listeners get in touch with you? They want to learn more. They want to passively invest. They just want to reach out and chat. How can they learn more?
They can get a hold of me. I would feel free to send me a text.
Okay.
Right. My direct number, you can text is 651-335-1586. And yeah, I'll usually respond to those.
Okay. Don't spam him, please. Okay. If you
No,
spam him, he's
identify
not going to
yourself.
respond. He's just going to, identify yourself.
Give
Hey,
me a
Justin,
name.
I listened to you on the Pillars of Wealth
Yes.
podcast. Like, that's a good introduction, right? I get
Right.
some people that they send me something and I'm like, who the heck is this person?
Don't just send me a question with no
Yeah.
identification.
No, identify yourself, please.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, you have a great rest of the day. Talk to
Hey,
you
you
later.
too. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Todd.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. But your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.